Today we sit down with Nick Patti. He's the current head coach of Salve Women's Rugby. Nick's love of coaching started at an early age, and we hear how spending time with his grandfather and their shared love of Notre Dame football influenced his coaching early on. And through different roles in high school football, youth rugby, and collegiate rugby, he's really found his way and his authentic self. Welcome to the Coach to Coach podcast. Have you run into any more moments where your generation is clearly showing with the kids and they've either given you crickets or anything? Have you had those moments yet?
Yeah, all the time. I practice being a male in his 30s, coaching women's rugby, college women's rugby. We were on a bus ride home from some school in Western Mass. And one of my players, she's 20, and we were talking about how I went to Salve. So I would take buses to Providence and all that stuff. Mom, if you're listening to this, earmuffs. But we would go to Providence on buses. And the player looked at me and she goes, "You didn't have Uber?" And I said, "No, I went to school 2009, 2013. So Uber was just starting." And then I told them about taxi cabs and how you had to call them up. And you thought I reinvented the wheel when I told them that. So that's been one of the big ones. Music-wise, their new generation of music is definitely not where I'm at. So we try. I used to do something called Set Piece Friday, which was just doing all the set pieces and just saying, "Hey, let's throw some music on." That evolved into music every day. And now their playlist is all curated by any player who stays on the team. They get 3 songs on the playlist. So we have about 70 songs roughly, and then the coaches can put some music on as well. So my music and their music do not clash. I put yacht rock on there every now and then. I just listened to King Von the other day, who's this rapper from Chicago. So they're making fun of me now that I'm listening to more hip music than I used to. So it's definitely something.
I love that. We actually we had music at our home game yesterday, and the music was going. And as you do when you're coaching, you kind of drown it out on game day, And one of our women's players was like, "Coach, is this your playlist?" And I was like, "What?" She goes, "Oh, it's so good. You pick such good songs." And I was like, "Thanks." And then I was like, "It's not my playlist."
I also coached high school football for 4 years, and that generational gap was even larger. So these were freshmen in high school. Me, and I'm just graduated college, and that generational gap, I couldn't even begin to talk about those stories there.
Okay. Let's dive into that a little bit more. But Nick, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? Where do you coach currently? And then we'll dive into your story.
Awesome. So my name's Nick Patti. I am the head coach of the Salve Regina University women's rugby team. That's in Newport, Rhode Island. We are a small college, or they've now moved to Division III NCR team. We have one of the smaller schools in Rhode Island, or in the NCR as well, because our whole campus, I believe, is around 1,800. We are relatively small, just in general. So that's this quick overview of who I am. I went to Salve, played rugby at Salve for 3 years, won a national championship in 2012. Actually beat your team, Cal Maritime, in the finals that year. And I come from Salve by way of New York. So I'm from Westchester, New York originally. Played football all throughout middle school, high school, elementary school. Got recruited to play at Salve for a year. Decided that wasn't the route I wanted to go. And 10, 11 years later, here we are.
Nice. Let's talk about those days growing up in New York, right? I hear you played multiple sports. Were there any sort of moments growing up where you noticed, or maybe one of your coaches or family members noticed, like, Nick, you might be a coach someday. What would that be like for you? Is that something you'd be interested in? Like, did you ever have any moments like that?
Oh, definitely. So there's 2 stories that come to mind with that. The first, every Friday after games. Now this is 2007 to 2009. So my grandpa would video every game on a handheld camcorder, pre-huddle, pre-anything like that. And I would go home every Friday night after the games were over and watch film. We would do it on Saturday. Saturday for varsity practice, we would still watch film. But I would get a jump on it by watching on Fridays with my grandpa. The only reason I did that was because I wanted to watch Notre Dame football after practice was over on Saturday. So I had my priorities in line there. And then, so my grandpa and I have always been, we've had whiteboards, chessboards, everything at the dinner table, just talking skiing. So that's always been kind of in my background. The joke he has with me still is I'm going to coach Tennessee one day. Football, rugby, I don't know what. He wants me to go down and coach in Rocky Top. But then the other one that really kind of started this, my senior year, I was going to Salve to play football. And I'm not the biggest guy. I'm 5'5". I was 230 at the time, not the prototypical offensive lineman, even if it's Division III. And my football coach brought me into his office, and he was also my history teacher. And he said, Nick, I don't think you should go to Salve. I think you should go to Wisconsin. Apply to Wisconsin. They have a great history program. You can do stuff with football. And I said, no. And that kind of built a chip on my shoulder. But he was the first person to actually say, you could do stuff with coaching down the line. But I took it as a slight against me. But now when you think about it, now when I'm coaching and I'm doing all this stuff now, I'm like, hey, Bill was right. Coach Brody was right. I could have went to Wisconsin, got the same degree, and still been a coach there. So I'm happy the way I went. But those were definitely two stories. My grandpa is probably my biggest influence in coaching. And then Coach Brody with his comment about me going to Wisconsin was definitely something that I kept in the back of my mind forever.
I just have to say, I'm really happy you stuck it to him and didn't go to Wisconsin. That means we wouldn't be able to be friends or colleagues, because as a former Minnesota coach, you have to announce your allegiance when you get to each of the borders up there. It's that tough. So
not even the reciprocity will allow you to?
No, Minnesota didn't get reciprocity with Wisconsin. Or do they? No, they get Wisconsin, Iowa, the Dakotas, and Manitoba, of all places.
Interesting.
Yeah. Not Iowa. I'm sorry, not Iowa. Wisconsin, Dakotas, Manitoba. So we'd started recruiting at Manitoba before I left, but that's another story. Right. It's funny. I actually thought about the first question to ask you the last couple of days trying to get this set up. I was going to lead off with a Notre Dame football question, just based off of, getting to know you on Twitter and seeing all your stuff. I was like, oh man, this guy lives or dies with Notre Dame football. Where did that come from? Was that something with your grandpa or family? Tell me about that.
So no one in my family went to Notre Dame. The closest we got was my rejection letter. And really with that, we started, my grandpa was always a huge fan. So he grew up in the age of all the national championships. And really when it came to starting for me to understand sports, I don't like professional sports. The only team I like is Notre Dame. And that my grandpa really instilled that in me. Every Saturday we sat down, we watched the games. I went through the end of Bob Davie, Tyrone Willingham, Charlie Weiss, Brian Kelly, now Marcus Freeman. But really that was the sport. And it was, how can you get to that point where you're going to be at Notre Dame one day? And there's things I do now that I'm like, all right, how can I get out to South Bend and bring my team to a tournament out there? Even though we would be Division I versus Division III if we did go out that way, it's always been something there. And it also kind of shapes my coaching philosophy now. I have a whiteboard here. I have a picture of Lou Holtz right above me, and it says "Save Jimmy Johnson's ass for me," which was after the 1988, or right before the game started, in the 88 Catholics versus Convents game. He signed it that way. So I have that right there. My whiteboard is just a bunch of quotes, and one of the big influences is from Marcus Freeman. It's something that he said when he started was choose hard. And I told my team, we're going to choose hard every day. And not just on the field, but in the classroom, in life, where if you choose hard, life is going to be easier down the road. So we took that, and they take it to heart. That's one of our mottos that we have. And then this year, Notre Dame is on a Peacock kind of documentary series. And the first episode, Coach Freeman sat down with Coach Holtz, and when he was talking about the 88 team, he said that the three things that they taught were that they were going to be the closest, most fundamental, and also the most, for lack of a better word, violent on the field. And really with that, we did the same thing. So we were going to be the toughest. We were going to be the most compassionate and caring for each other. But we were also going to be the most fundamental on the field. So we talked about that in our first meeting, about how we were going to do this, this, and this. And each practice afterward, I said to myself, I said to my associate head coach, did we hit what we had to hit? And we actually won a tournament last week or week before where we were the closest on the field. We were the most fundamental, and we were also the toughest. And that shone through. We beat 3 Division II teams in that tournament to win. So it's definitely a big influence of mine as a coach and just in my life in general.
That's awesome that you could take that sort of piece of your life that has meant so much to you between you and your grandfather and your family, and then in sort of, we call it acquiring, for lack of a better term, in the coaching world, right? You find something and then you break it down into your context. And I think that's amazing that you're doing that with your team now. We were talking a little bit earlier about sort of your journey. There were some early signs there. What was the catalyst to get you into coaching? What was like your first role? I know you said it might not have been rugby or was rugby, but like, tell me about how you went from, hey, this is a good idea and people think I'd be good at it, to Coach Nick.
Kind of a 2-part. One's official, one's unofficial. We were at Salve 2010 to 2012, 15s. That was all we did. It was 15s. And that was back in the day when NCR was NSCRO, and you had to play your fall season, but then you had to travel out to Glendale, Colorado in the spring for the national championship. And it was a bifurcated season, and the Wild West days of small college rugby.
Yeah.
So we did very well. I was the president of the team, Salve, going into my fall of 2012, spring 2013, my senior year. And we lost in the Elite Eight to a team that would eventually win. Either win or come in third, New England College. So our season was over. We said, all right, we go to the spring. We played some tournaments. We kind of just were in a holding pattern, getting ready to graduate. And that was kind of a tough place to be. But then NSCRO came out of the clouds and said, we have this tournament. It's called Sevens. And if you play in this one tournament, you can go to nationals. And I looked at a couple of my friends, all seniors, a couple juniors and freshmen. And I said, you want to try it? They go, we don't have a coach. And I said, I can figure this out. So that was my unofficial. I'd say that's my first time as a coach. We went 2-2 in the tournament, lost to New England College again, and also lost to Western New England. And Rob Geary, he coached the team at that point. He's one of my good Twitter friends right now. I don't like to bring it up every now and then. It was a sore subject then. But we're playing sevens, and I'm like, I've never heard of that. You can run backwards and then go forwards, and it's a whole new worldview. And one of the players on that team was actually Shane Dempsey, who played for us for 2 years, and then he went out to Arizona, finished his career out there, went to Ombak, and now he went to Mystic for a little bit, Mystic River, and now he's back out in San Diego. So Shane was really the catalyst of teaching us how to do it. I was just more of the logistics guy, getting us a bus to New Hampshire and all that stuff. But after I graduated, I said, hey, let's figure out how I can still do this type of coaching thing.
Yeah, and where did that take you? What was your next role after your unofficial sevens coach role?
That took me to the back of a car on a unofficial work interview for this company selling Verizon television boxes in Eastchester, New York. And I'm sitting there and I said, I am part of this pyramid scheme. I don't want to be part of this. So I start on my phone looking for jobs while they're driving to these locations. And a job that popped up was the freshman football coach at Yorktown High School. Now, Yorktown is about 20 minutes from me. And I said, I played football before. I could figure this out. And I just applied. Literally, as they're driving to this location, I'm already checked out of this job interview because I didn't want to be there. I applied right on my phone. I think it was a BlackBerry, maybe one of the first iPhones at the time. I apply. I'm like, all right, if they give it to me, they give it to me. I applied for a couple other coaching jobs as well. But then I leave this, probably the worst interview I've ever been on. But I applied for this job and I said, I really want this coaching job. A couple days later, I got a call from the head coach. He said, hey, come in for an interview. Let's figure this out. Interviewed with him, interviewed with the athletic director. And then they offered me a job right after camp. I did like a working interview through this football camp that they did. And then the day that camp ended, they offered me the freshman head coach job. So I took that on. I did that for 2 years as the freshman coach. And I also was the varsity assistant. So I did like football operations. I did a whole bunch of stuff just within the team. And then the last 2 years, I was a JV assistant and varsity assistant doing football operations, making sure the cameras were all ready and kind of all the go-between stuff that people don't really think about for that. So a lot of game film breakdown, a lot of analysis and all of that.
You were breaking down film as a high school football coach?
100%. I would fall asleep.
Couldn't see that coming.
Yeah, I would fall asleep on the computer every now and then. I would do the ODK, so offense, defense, kickoff, and then down and distance, all that. That's easy stuff. And then I would get into actually breaking down tendencies. And that was a really cool thing. And that actually started my passion of wanting to do that type of stuff down the line. And then really didn't have a very good first 2 years as a freshman coach. They had me running a wing T offense, which is very hard to install. And then they weren't running that on the varsity level. So it wasn't really apples to apples at that time. It was an easy foray into what they were doing. So I only won one game as a freshman football coach. So I won 1-10. So my final game where I knew that I was on the outs, I won that game. So that was a pretty important one. There's actually a picture of me getting a Gatorade bath in middle of November in New York for winning that. It was cold, but it was the most rewarding one that I had. And then after football, I did 4 years. I moved up to Massachusetts to be with my girlfriend. I just said, I'm good. I took the job, didn't really want to do anything. And then I saw a summer job to be a volunteer at a youth rugby team. So they're a pretty cool team. They're called the Rentham Barbarians. They're one of the more well-known ones in the Myro circle. And I went talked to the head guy who started everything, whose father actually started Atlantis Rugby. So that's a pretty cool background.
Nice.
And I liked what they were doing. I liked their philosophy. They had me starting with kindergartners, though. And that's like herding cats. And I said, Steve, I love being here. I want to coach. I don't think I can herd cats. And he laughed. He said, go up to the 7th, 8th grade team. And I said, all right, let me see what's going on up there. That was not like herding cats. That was actual rugby, and it was co-ed, which was interesting. Co-ed rugby for 7th and 8th graders, full tackle. My scrum half actually ended up playing Naira D2. I have one of my players. He was in 7th grade. He plays for Roger Williams now. I saw him play in the conference championship game a couple weekends ago, so that was kind of a full circle moment there. But that was when I really got the bug again for coaching. And if I didn't start that volunteer position, I don't know if I would be here today.
Both of those roles sound like they laid some platforms for you, right? Yep. And they sort of allowed you to have some time under tension, either in the football field or in, the co-ed youth rugby field, to sort of try things out and figure out your ways. Tell me a few of the things you may have taken from each of those roles.
So really with that football, it taught me not to be afraid of being wrong. Being able to throw myself out there and figure out. I also had quite a temper back when I was coaching football. I once got 3 15-yard penalties on one play. I will fight this to the end of time that I was right with what happened. And I'll always defend my players. So that's something that every player knows, that I'll go to bat for them for whatever. And I'll never say that I'm wrong about that. Funny enough, one of the players on the team won a national championship in lacrosse. So me and him were talking the other day, and he brought that up again. And I said, hey, I did what I had to do. But football taught me to not be afraid to be wrong. Also taught me how to quell my temper if needed. And it also taught me a little bit of humility. That was a big thing. I was blessed with being on teams that won a lot. We went 27-0 on our run at Salve. We lost in the 2010 Division III national championship semifinals. Then we won the 3rd place game, and then we won 27 straight from there. Wow. So winning's fun, and not winning's not fun. And I think I needed that a little bit to understand that you're not always going to win. Even in high school, we won a lot, and I really enjoy winning. But having that 1 in 10, 2 seasons helped me understand that it's not the end all be all, and that me as a coach, I'm not going to be judged just by wins and losses, but the impact I make on the players. So I took that a lot. And then youth rugby, it taught me to like rugby again, how to coach sevens. And personally, I think I enjoy coaching sevens more than I enjoy coaching 15s, but don't tell my forwards that. But it really got me back into rugby, and it taught me that the community that rugby has, especially in Massachusetts, of how close and knit everyone was. That was the most important thing, making sure that you kept your community. And if I go to Rentham to scout now, to do some recruiting, and they know who I am still. Oh, that's the Salve coach. He coached here back in the day. And it's really cool to still see the coaches that I'm close with, but also that sense of community. And I'll go to other tournaments. I'll see the same parents, and they'll still talk to me. And it's just a really cool thing that's going on for that. So the community, the humility, and the impact that I can make on players.
Those trajectories, right, from your high school football experiences into your college experiences, then your high school football coaching experience, which is, it shows it's taught you a lot, right, and put you there, and then now your community experience at Rentham. I mean, you can, I didn't know you then. I've known you the last couple of years on Twitter and see the things you're putting out, but you could see that those things are important to you now through your content and the things that we connect on. So that's really cool to hear how that came about. Something you said there sparked a question for me that I saw on Twitter. Do you love winning more, or do you hate losing more?
I think I hate losing more than I enjoy winning. Just because when you lose, and I keep meticulous records of my wins and losses throughout my coaching career, so I know every team I've lost to, and it's one of those things where I go back and I'll talk to my associate head coach randomly and be like, hey, do you remember what we did here? We could have done this better. And it's the sense of finality that happens at the end of a game that you just sit there and you're like, shit, like I could have done this. We could have done this better. We could have done this better. Why didn't we try this? And I don't like that feeling when you leave something on the table. And it's actually something that I took from you, funny enough, to parlay this. There was something that you put on Instagram for one of your first sessions about not leaving coffee for later. Mm-hmm. And that was something that I took to heart. And I started telling my team that. And they all looked at me like, Coach, you're crazy. Like, you don't even drink coffee. And that was one of those things where I don't like the feeling of leaving something on the table. And I think that it's not so much I hate losing. I don't like the what if we did this? What if we did that? I had to go to a Chris Stapleton concert after I lost by a try. And I won. It was a terrible concert. But I think it was even worse because we lost that game. And an hour later, I'm at this concert. And I just sat in the back of my wife's Subaru, like laying down in the trunk, thinking about the play that we lost on. I can still remember it was a line out that they mauled, and then they rolled off the maul and they just scored. And it's something that we could have prevented. And it was just like we were right there. We had the lead, all this stuff. And it was just, what if we tried something different? So to change my answer there, I hate the what if more than I like the what did we do? Hey, did you see what we did there? And I had a lot of those, a lot of wins, luckily. But at the same time, the what if is the worst.
I could echo that in many ways. My partner will tell you that I'm probably one of the worst people after a game, especially after a loss, right? Because I ruminate on it a lot. I think the other piece for me, apart from me, that I have a very similar feeling, and we're both coming up on the end of our semesters for our teams, right?
Right.
At the end of the semester, I'm always wishing I had 2 more months, 2 more practices. What else can we do? And I think that's where that like what ifs lie in the loss portion of it from coaching. It's like, oh, what else could I have done? Because I think we truly feel we're the ones responsible for preparation of our teams. And I could relate to that on many, many levels, mate. let's continue that journey. Like, how do you go from Rentham? Where do you go next after Rentham? Did you pick
So
your head up? Did you take some time off? What did that look like?
funny enough, I did the whole Rentham. I only did a year there, so or not even 3 months. We came in second in the state. We lost in the state championship sevens game, which was like the grand final, and we impressed to that point. And the team that we lost to is no longer a team, so I like to think that we got a one up on them. But it's kind of frustrating. We could have won that game. We only lost by 2 tries, and they were a very good team. So that ends, and I said, all right, what's my next move? Rentham doesn't do anything in the fall. What can I do? And I saw that there was an opening, or so I'm involved with the conference, and they reached out and they said that there was an opening at Wheaton College in Northern Mass. And I said, all right. And I previously applied for the women's coaching job there, but I was working in Cambridge and just didn't work out. So I applied. They called me in for an interview. I interviewed with the club sports director and the captains. So thought the interview went well. Did what I had to do. Interviews are pretty easy. I'm a recruiter by nature, so it's pretty easy to talk to people. And then I left. I said, nah, whatever, we're good here. If I get it, I get it. If I don't, I'll find something new. And hour and a half later, I'm at a Jersey Mike's. Some sub chain like a Jersey Mike's that's not only well known in Massachusetts, and they called me up and they said they would like to offer me the job. So I accept. I was ready to go, and that was my first college job, and that was something that I was working towards. My grandpa and I always talked about, you're going to coach in college one day. You're going to get there. You're going to do this, and that was really the peak of saying, hey, I'm now a college coach, and now I can make an impact on a team where they were always middling and they were always kind of right there. And how can I make that impact? And so I did 4 years there, but one of the years was a COVID year.
Oh, okay.
So that was pretty tough. So 3 full years. One moment. Here we go. So first year, went 0-5 in the regular season, but the teams we're playing had future Free Jacks, New England Free Jacks on the team. They had very good, just across the board, they were very good teams that we were playing. And we were in a tough conference. But the one thing that I told my team is I don't care what the scoreboard shows as long as you compete. If you are competitive in every game, it's going to pay dividends. It didn't pay dividends in 15. And that was tough because you're a new coach coming into this program and you're selling the kids on a dream, but the dream's not coming to reality.
Yeah.
And then we go to the sevens tournament at the end of the season, and it was just a way to get ready for sevens in the spring. And the first game of the day, we beat Brown University. I think it was their Seaside that we played, but a win's a win. A scalp is a scalp when you play a team like that. We beat them, and we're like, all right, now coach is starting to make sense here. And then our second game, we won. We beat another team that was pretty good. We win our third game. We were booked into the semifinals against UMaine, which is a D1 school. They were or D1 technically, but they were D3 by rugby standards. And we ended up beating them as well to book our place in the final. We didn't win the final, but the look on my team's face when they got a trophy, because it was the first trophy that they got in the time that they were there, meant everything. So even though we came in second place in this tournament, they got hardware. That was the most important thing for them. And I thought that was really cool to see that. Then COVID hits and our whole sprint shut down, which was unfortunate for those seniors. So their last moment of rugby was getting hardware, which I thought was pretty impactful there.
Let's go back to that fall semester, right? You're starting out, you're realizing you've made it to this level that you've always sort of dreamed about or aspired to get to. What were some of the challenges you faced in that first semester that maybe you question your choice? Sometimes we do that as coaches.
The whole season, my first game was against Salve. That was my alma mater. My friends gave me hell once they saw it was on the schedule. And it wasn't easy. It was in the back of my head the whole time of we're playing Salve, and Salve was this giant just in the background. It probably didn't help that my friends were also chirping me, and I was just so ate up about that. So I told the team before that game started to not let the moment outweigh the preparation. And for the first couple minutes, it was going well. We were doing what we had to do. We were rolling right along. And then unfortunately one of my players got hit in a weird rock. And he runs down the field, but he goes, "Coach, my neck hurts." And I said, "Oh, no." You're looking right there. "Oh no." I said, "Get down, take a knee." They were able to stop play. We had to get ambulance there. Turns out that he broke or fractured part of his neck, where it was so close to being really bad that we were all just after that we just lost control of the game. We ended up losing 100 and something to nothing. But that was the first moment of my coaching career where I was like, what happened? Like, what could I have done to prevent that? I ended up going to the hospital with him, settling the team down. It was a really scary moment. He never played rugby again, unfortunately, but the team did rally around that. But those were the moments there for me where I was just like, is it worth it? Could have I prevented this? And it was the what if again. And that what if there, that was the biggest thing that really challenged me. And I said, all right, if I can get through this, if I know that this player is going to be all right, we just got to get back to work and we have to figure out how to make this better. The team competed in every game. The scoreboard didn't show it, but they were able to get through that by just coming together. And that was the sense of community there. So that's kind of where that falls. I also have this unique thing that I do after every game, win or loss. I try to find time to eat something alone. So I started that as a football coach. I would eat at this pizza place, Maria's Pizza. Would go there after every game, sit there alone, eat 2 slices of pizza, and then go home. Because that allowed me enough time to, what my wife says now, is to leave it on the island. So I'm not going to bring it home with me. I'm going to center myself, think about what I have to think about, leave it on the island, and then when I'm home, I'm home. So it's that compartmentalization of that. But when that happened against Salve with the broken neck and then also losing on top of that, it was hard to compartmentalize. That was a pretty tough game. All my friends were there. My family came up for that game, and it was just a tough time there.
We always talk about the things that they don't prepare you for, right? Selections, classroom management. But I think your first major injury as a coach is something that any injury in particular is hard to prepare for, but like your first major one, and it sounds like thankfully you had a strategy, right? You leave it on the island and piece of the puzzle, which, a lot of us call that decompression or sort of our alone time. I can empathize with that a lot. The first one I had, I sat in a bathtub and cried, mate. It was really, really hard. And that's not anything I wish for any coach. I hope that's a moment many coaches don't ever have to experience. You go through that first season, COVID happens, your spring season's interrupted. At what point in your career, or you said you were there about 4 years, was that year 1, year 2 for when COVID happened? When did that happen?
No, I just pulled up my little rugby coaching record. So I was there fall 2019, and then COVID happened. So then we didn't have a competitive season again until the fall of 2021.
Wow! And were you able to practice? What was? I'm very interested in this because I also had some time in Minnesota I think this is probably around the time we started connecting on Twitter because it was just the thing to do during COVID. But what was COVID like for you while you were coaching at that?
So fall semester, I was not able to actually see my team because the requirements were I had to get tested every day or every time I was going to be on campus. It was a very confusing type of period there. And just with the job that I had, I couldn't just go get tested and then drive another hour home for practice at night. So I actually was a virtual coach sending my plans to another coach, the women's coach, who would run the session for me. But the sessions had to be in cohorts. So you couldn't have the full team together. It had to be separated into like groups of 7. So it was this whole big thing. But then one doesn't show up, 2 don't show up. You're down to two kids maybe, and it turns into your best laid plans of mice and men. It goes awry right there. So then I was able to get back spring. So fall, nothing. Spring 2020, there was nothing. Fall 2020, I couldn't be on campus. Spring 2021, I was able to be back on campus with them, being able to practice because I was able to work out of my boss's office. So 3 days a week, I was able to do that. Fall 2021, we were back. That was the final. We were able to get back out there for a season. So that was kind of where that fell. And then spring 2022 was my last season. We coached. I did 7s with them. We ended up going to 4 tournaments, and we ended up placing. We actually won the plate competition for a social bracket, where it was the Beast of the East tournament, which is a large New England rugby tournament that a lot of people take pride in. So that was our we went 8-12-1 that final semester, but we were able to actually play together and practice together and show that we were able to get through it. But at that time, some things happened, and I just said, you know what, I don't think I continue doing this. Kind of jokingly, I now resign my position, kind of like Bill Belichick did on the napkin. But I only did that as a joke. I actually talked to everyone who had to be talked to. And then I took that fall off. So fall 2022 was my sabbatical. And then it leads me to today, which is a whole story in and of itself.
The COVID pandemic fascinates me as a sociologist. When you coached during COVID, like many folks, you could be on campus, or you had cohorts, you had numbers restrictions, you probably had some sort of physical contact restrictions.
Zero.
No
physical contact.
Yeah. We actually cut down pool noodles, and we were using pool noodles at Minnesota. Right. It was a wild time. I'm just wondering, are you seeing any effects from COVID with particular groups of athletes, like years of athletes? Are you experiencing that where you're at?
So I was the director of the North Atlantic Collegiate Rugby Conference, the men's competition director. And you're seeing teams who were never able to rebound from that time. And there are other teams that are just now rebounding. NCR did a great thing allowing for a COVID year of eligibility for some players. So jokingly, you get 8 years to play 5 years of rugby, which, you have 25-year-olds playing it at some point. They can get their doctorate sometimes. Funny enough, I did have a player who did her COVID year, but also a grad year and a redshirt year. So all this stuff, by the time she ended, I gave her a gold watch like she was retiring. Just bought off of Amazon. It's the cheapest watch ever, and now she still wears it. I saw her the other day, and she was wearing the watch. I thought that was the funniest thing. But you're seeing some schools, I don't want to say haves and have-nots. It's really what did they do during COVID versus what could they have. And some schools were able to kind of just get through it and just say, hey, just another time, we're going to figure it out. But other schools who were riding this high just fell off, and now it's just rebuilding from there. And I think we're finally getting through that rebuilding phase back to almost normalcy. Yeah. But my players, when I think about right now, so I have freshmen, so they're the class of 2028. So that means they were through school. They were in high school 2020 to 2024, in theory, if we're doing quick math there. Yeah. And the freshman year of high school was during COVID. They graduated middle school during COVID. They probably graduated virtually. And so that year and all the COVID, like if you're graduating high school during that period as well, my seniors last year, they never had a senior night because they were the COVID class. So we made sure that senior nights were a thing again for us. You're seeing that some are more well adjusted to the college environment as they get away from having to do the non-classroom stuff. But you're also seeing that they're more receptive to, hey, let's hop on a Zoom, let's go over this, because they know what to do there. So it's a mix of things. But I think with my freshmen right now, for lack of a better word, they are more comfortable in social situations than some other classes that I've seen because they did have 3 years of high school to be in person. So it's an interesting dynamic there. And I have seven freshmen right now on my team. I only have 2 sophomores that stayed with the team. So that's interesting as well when you see kind of the numbers game where you get more. I think I'm going to get more freshmen coming in overall because now they are kind of returned to normal in terms of athletics and school and all that stuff.
Yeah, 100%. It sounds very similar to what I've experienced both in Minnesota and now in Northern California. The socialization for that group just ahead of the freshman class of right now is I'm not going to say suffering is not the right word, but they were affected by that lack of socialization, right? This almost like they didn't recognize social cues in many ways. And it was like, whoa, this is interesting. It's validating and interesting to hear that you've had similar experiences where you're at too, right?
And I think so. I left Wheaton, but when I left there in spring of 2022, we had a freshman, and he was fine. He was a good player. He was interested in playing. I wouldn't say he would be like on the USA team right now, and he would say the same thing. But he wanted a team, so we said, "All right, this is going to be your team." A couple of years go by, haven't really heard from him. Find out that he's the president of the team now. He's a senior. He's their president. He's still talking to me. I saw him at a tournament. He gave me a big hug. And the fact that we were able to keep him around through COVID, through all the stuff. And he said, "Coach, if I didn't find this team, I wouldn't be graduating." And that was really cool to hear because that's that sense. It goes back to the community. "Coach, if I didn't have XYZ, I wouldn't be here right now. I would have left the school." And I felt the same way because I was going to transfer out of Salve. I didn't want to be there. I wanted to go to Palm Beach Atlantic where all my friends were going. I still get emails from Miami and Fordham. They think I'm enrolling in the next class because I don't know how to get rid of their listserv. And I was ready to be out. I said, "All right, I'm not playing football. Let's go somewhere." But because I found rugby and that sense of community and some of my best friends, I never left. And that's definitely something that I hope to deliver to players. I have players who transfer and we get it, but they're able to come back and still be part of the community. And that's really the big thing.
I echo that sentiment, the community, like being part of something during a time and you really couldn't be part of anything.
Yeah.
I think that was crucial for a lot of folks. You said you took a sabbatical when you left Wheaton.
Yes.
What was that like? How long was that?
It was a semester.
Okay. Only a semester.
It wasn't very long.
Can't keep a good man down. Only a semester. But did you what was normal life like? Like, what's it like on the other side?
So that was fall of 2022. It was fine. I was still doing the competition directing, so I was still involved with rugby. I was watching a lot more football at that time, but it was nice. It was calm. It was calmer, and you saw that was kind of the rise of just trying for me to figure out what I wanted to do next. Was it going to be going back to coach football or what was it? And February of 2023, I'm getting ready to go to bed, and the women's competition director calls me up, and I don't want to talk to you right now. It's like 9:30. I'm like, I'm not answering this. So I roll over, I answer, go, "Hey, what's up?" She said, "Salve needs a women's coach." I said, "I'll probably be back." So I hang up. It was a quick call. I knew everything. There's a long history. My friend coached them beforehand. So I've known the team. So they originally started before or right after. So the men's team started in 2007. The women's team started in 2008. They went for a couple of years and they fell off just because of interest. And then they started back up again, came in third in the nation in 2018. And I've known them forever. I'm very close with a lot of their alumni. So I'm laying there. My wife goes, "What was that?" I said, "Salve needs a women's coach." I said, "Are you going to do it?" I said, "Yep." And that was the whole conversation. It wasn't hard to make that decision because I love my university. I love rugby. and I know that they had the talent there to make an impact. So called back the next day. I said, hey, set me up with an interview. Interviewed with the president and the e-board, and they pretty much hired me on the spot. So that was February. I think February 1, they called me. Practice was 13 days later, either on Valentine's Day or the day before Valentine's Day. And we hit our sprint season. If they didn't have a coach, they wouldn't have a sprint season. So that it was a dire piece there.
Yeah.
And we said, all right, let's see what we can do with Salve. We played in multiple tournaments. We came in second in my first ever tournament. We lost to the Coast Guard Academy. We came in second again. Or no, I'm sorry. First tournament ever, we lost to WPI, Worcester Polytech, in the finals. UMass Dartmouth was my second tournament. We came in second, lost to the Coast Guard Academy. We came in second to the CCRC, lost to Endicott. And then we came in second in the Beast of these 15s. So my first season at Salve, we went 15-5 over those tournaments. So that was new coach, new culture, new program, essentially. Mm-hmm. And they were able to really pick it up quickly. So we said, all right, now what are we going to do moving forward? And a lot of what I said is, yeah, I can do this alone. I had two great assistants. One was a former player. The other one was the president of the team at the time. They were very helpful throughout trying to get my feet wet. But I said, if we want to advance this team to the spot where we have to be, I need an assistant coach. I need someone who I can just call up who isn't on the team. Yeah. So we actually found my associate head coach, played on the team in 2018. I've always been friends with her, but it was like, hey, you want to do this? She said yes. I had Shane Dempsey, who called back to the earlier, do an interview with her. Passed it. The interview with the team. They loved her. We brought her aboard. And Jackie has been no less than the most helpful person on anything. I was talking to her earlier today. We have ideas for the sprint already. And just having that support system and that humility to say, I need someone to go off of. Because I hated assistant coach before. Before I started coaching rugby, I never needed an assistant. It was all me. I could figure it out. Yeah. I didn't realize, hey, can't do everything. I need a sounding board. I need someone else to talk to. And that's where she came into play.
What's Jackie's full name?
That's Jackie Martell.
Jackie Martell. Nice. And do you coach forward? She coaches backs. Like, what is your coach?
Yeah, so we joke around. Sometimes I'll pop over to the backs and say, you do the things that backs do, because they know I know it. But it's just like, hey, backs do your lines and stuff like that. I'll go with the forwards. Then funny enough, I'm coaching the bats one day and the forwards are playing duck goose. And I said, all right, I'm not going to do this today. And so she's my bats coach. She is also in charge of 7 substitutions. I'll run ideas by her where I'll say, hey, I want this person in, I want that person in. But she's really able to kind of look at what's going on and kind of make those moves because she knows what I want before I even do. So we're very in line there with how we coach together. You'll see us on the field. We'll be 20, 30 meters away if we're not in a TZ zone where they're able to let us roam. And we'll look at each other and we'll know exactly what we're looking to do. So it's really a synchronistic type of thing there.
Okay, let's dive into that a little bit. Before this, I didn't need an assistant. It was me. I was going to take it on. Where did your sort of change in mindset come to where you wanted that assistant coach? Was there a catalyst for that? Was there a moment? And then how do you work on your co-coaching relationship to get that symbiotic relationship?
Yeah, so I think it was during when I was coaching at Wheaton and maybe a little bit at Salve where I'm sitting down and I'm on the whiteboard trying to come up with ideas. And we had this one game with at Wheaton, our starting prop was sick. And he told me 3 hours before the game that he was going to try, but he couldn't do it. And I had no one to sound that off to except for my wife. And she's been around rugby and she understands rugby very well. But there's that other aspect of when you're with the players every day, you're able to see a little bit more. So I'm just yelling just out loud my feelings. And at that point, I'm like, I need someone that I can just call and be like, hey, what's good? Let's figure this out. So that was a big thing. And then towards Salve, We were in the spot where if we beat MCAT for the CCRC championship, we were going to go to nationals. We ended up, it was about 30 seconds left in the game. We tied the game. They got a line break. They scored. They won. But we were literally maybe one ball bouncing a different way away from going to nationals. And with that, there was a whole bunch of stuff going on with my personal life where if we made it to nationals, it would have been a very tricky situation. And I was already figuring out like my assistant coaches could go and I could be on the phone with them having an AirPod in. I'm like trying to do all this like year 3000 type of stuff. And then I realized, hey, they're still in college. Like they are college kids that you're throwing all this stuff at. Maybe you should have someone who's graduated, who's removed, who can be your sounding board. And that's kind of where it kicked off from there.
Yeah, nice. Oh, I hate the bounce of a ball. Sometimes it is heartbreaking.
I think about that play a lot, and it was a tough one. But the other question that you asked was how me and Jackie get on the same page. And a lot of it is we've known each other for a while, so we're able to just kind of know what each other's thinking before we say it. And it's just a lot of conversation. So like after practice, I'll just throw ideas at her and she'll say, you're right, you're wrong. We talked before about how our 7th season wants to work. And she said, hey, this, and this. I agree with some of it. I didn't agree with some of it. And it's just me and her trusting each other enough that we can go back and forth and say, you're right, you're wrong. We'll fight sometimes. She doesn't like an idea that I throw out there and I do it. She'll get mad at me. And then at the end, we're cool at the end. So it's one of those things where we're both competitors and we've been at the highest level. So we only want what's right for the team. And even if we're not agreeing in the moment, at the end, we'll do an after-action report and kind of walk the field after the game or just find some time to talk and be like, all right, what did we do right? What could have done better? And we just kind of go through from there.
What does Jackie bring to your coaching setup that you don't have?
Well,
other than back knowledge.
Other than the back experience, I think a lot for her, she's able to relate to the players a little bit better than I am, just because she's been a Salve women's rugby player. I can talk about Salve men's rugby. I can talk about Salve rugby in general, but she's been in their shoes. She's played the teams we're playing, and she can relate to them in that regard. She is younger, so there is a little bit of a closer to the players where there's a little bit of that. But overall, sometimes when you're a male coaching females, there's this level of, we want to tell him everything, but do we want to tell him everything? Where Jackie can be more of that sounding board there for them because she's more relatable to some of the stuff that they'll be going through in college rather than just on the field. And I try to build that relationship. I say, hey, if you need to talk to me about anything, I'm here for you. But sometimes they feel a little bit more comfortable on that side. So having someone who's able to add to that is definitely very helpful.
You bring up some really good points there about relating to the groups of folks that you're coaching. What were some of the learning lessons you had early on when you went from Wheaton to Salve? What was it like going from coaching men's college rugby to women's college rugby?
I say this kind of in jest, but also in seriousness. Women listen better. They are very good at not only listening, but doing what you ask them to do when it comes to drills. And they're very literal. So I had to take where I could be more abstract and say, hey, do this and figure it out. I realized that coaching women's rugby, you need to say, hey, you need to do this. This is the point of the drill, and really dive into it. And they'll still do it. Sometimes I give them the abstract so they can figure it out. But they are very, what do we need? What's the goal of this? And how are we going to achieve it? So being more kind of regimented like that. The other thing was, it was just how I do my pregame speeches, how I'm able to relate to them. It changes every year. It changes per team. Some like more of the metaphysical stuff. The men, I could just talk and yell and kind of get them all fired up. It doesn't always work that way. We have some players. My scrum half right now is a big David Goggins enthusiast, so sometimes I'll tap into that for her. And one of my props is a huge Michael Jordan fan, so I'll tap into that as well. So I like to find out differences between the players and see where I can tap into. One of our big influences as the team, this actually happened a little bit after COVID while I was still at Wheaton, was Matthew McConaughey's book Green Lights. He has a poem in it called One in a Row. So any success takes one in a row, to paraphrase, is one in a row again. So just do one thing right and then do it over again and you'll be successful. We started saying that when I started at Salve, and that's one of our phrases that we use. It's that one in a row mentality, doing one thing right, one again, one again, one again. And really, if I said that at Wheaton or any men's team, they would look at me like, oh, you're quoting Matthew McConaughey. That's weird. But the women really took it to heart. And we still, I'll say it in practice, I'll say it in a game, and they really have taken to use that as one of our three models that we have.
I love that one in a row. I'm a big repetition guy, right? I saw somewhere recently, repetition removes all doubt. So I'm right in line with that. Let's talk about going to your alma mater, but not coaching your team. What are your processes around keeping tradition, building tradition? Like you talked about new coach, new culture, right? So, obviously there's a change and a transition when a coach takes over. What did you do in terms of that stuff?
Yeah, so really, because of when I played, the women's team didn't really have a ton of the traditions when I was there, so I couldn't tap into that, which is where Jackie's helpful because she is part of the team that really started what we still do today. We do, for lack of a better word, a haka post-match, more of a victory chant. So what the cool thing about that one is that we get any alumni who's at the game or anyone who's ever done it, they get to be in the circle. So we bring in them. If they're on the hill watching the game, we bring them in. Jackie gets to do it. I don't involve myself in that because I am not one who was part of that haka. So I sit off to the side. I like watching it. I have my son on my shoulder usually with that. So I allow that. Pre-game, because we are a Catholic university, the men and women always prayed before the game.
Mm-hmm.
We've always done it. It's one of our more unique customs. So we get on the post, we say Hail Mary, and then they start their pregame chant. That's something that has done throughout programs. We'll do it no matter what. Salve's going to pray before games. Some other things were just trying to figure out what I used to do. So snake balls, just being able to go right and left down the field with our forwards and just run into people. That was something I tried to ingrain. But then I realized the players that we have may not have been the snake type of player where we're picking and going down the field for 100 meters. So I try to play Salve rugby in that way, but then realize that Salve rugby is more of a mindset rather than a way of playing. It's really just trying to figure out where the players want to go and then guide them in that direction. Pretty much, I'm cool with whatever they do for the most part. If they have to run one or two things by me, I say, hey, you have free reign, but if you're not sure that I'll like it, run it by me and I'll let you know yes or no.
When you think back to your football days or your youth rugby days, is there anything that you brought to Salve or, anything you're doing now that was something you learned at the football time frame? How do you mesh all that together if you do that?
So kind of answering the question by flipping it a little bit. Mm-hmm. I was so focused on winning for so long that I forgot that competition was the most important thing. So the ability to compete is something that should be more valued than winning. So I recognized probably February 2023 or 2022 that if I were to emphasize competition over winning, the results that we want would happen. And so I was able to kind of look at what I did with coaching football and be able to change that. One thing that I brought from football that allowed me to continue at the level that I'm at right now is you have to get your work done no matter what. So we would go into the office and my head football coach played at Hofstra. He was an offensive lineman. He's a very good player. But we would have to get things done. And sometimes it would be there, we'd be there 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, just trying to get what we had to get done for that week. So it wasn't I'm tired, we'll figure it out the next day. No, it was sit down, get your work done, and continue from there. So it was all about just kind of knowing what you had to get done. The job isn't done until the job's done, essentially. So that's what I brought from there. The youth rugby is a little bit different. Really, I just took knowing the community base and understanding how important that is. No matter if we win or lose, we clap the fans who came to our games off, just to thank them for being there. So that was a big one that we had. And then at Wheaton, just knowing that while the record may show something that's not favorable, that you're making an impact on each player's lives no matter what. Funny enough, going back to football, one of my quarterbacks, he was my first quarterback ever. He's now a quarterback coach in Valhalla, and they went to the state championship, or they won the section championship. They were en route to state. New York is very weird when it comes to how they do their state championships. So I saw he won a section championship. I texted him. I saw his number on my phone. Said, "Hey, coach, congratulations. Go get it." And just a throwaway. Maybe he'll respond. Maybe he won't. Coach, thank you so much, and all this stuff. And I'm like, that's really cool that I was able to have an impact on him. Yeah. I had 2 players win lacrosse national championships, send a quick congratulations, and one of them sent this message back, 5-6 paragraphs long, about how he finally brought one to the university he was at and all this stuff. And it was really cool to see how much that meant to him. Then a quick, hey, congrats. Yeah. But it was still something that I'm saved in their phone still. One of those things. It wasn't like, oh, who's this?
Yeah, it's so good they still have your number saved, because when they don't, it kind of hurts.
Oh, definitely.
You strike me as a coach that's in it for the long game.
That's the plan.
Right. And those moments, you don't get them while they're there sometimes, right? You get them 5-6 years down the road. And I think those are amazing nuggets when they happen, right? Thinking back about your time in coaching, right, in your story, which is not done by any means. I don't hear it being done. What's something about coaching you don't know that you want to explore more?
That's a good question. I think the big thing, just trying to make it all come together, is how we're able to advance, especially on the women's rugby side, how we're able to advance the sport to a point where it's not, oh, we have 17 varsity sports and also some clubs. I want it to be, we have 18 varsity sports, or we have 17 varsity sports and rugby. And not just for the women's side, but for the men's side as well. Really making it feels, and I'm not sure if it's the same on the West Coast, but on the East Coast, there are some schools that it's varsity, then rugby, and then other sports. So I want everything to be included there. And how to advance that on the university level or just the level in general, it's something that I'm trying to work towards. It's conversations we're having with the university, but also just seeing how we can advance everything. And the bifurcation between NCR and USA Rugby and NIWA and CRA and all the different stuff, really that's something that I'm trying to explore to figure out not so much how I'm going to make an impact on it, but I would love to see how everyone can come back together and be one unified front, especially with what's going on for LA and the World Cup coming here and all of that.
Oh, yeah. Yep, I could tell you that's infrastructure, grassroots, college, everything is part of that bigger picture. That's in terms of the big picture. What about for Nick? What about Nick's coaching? What are some areas you want to explore as a coach in your coaching craft or your skills, your tool?
Yeah, I think for me, just in general, it's getting better at high school recruitment. This year, we brought on the men's side one recruit who made an instant impact. He was actually Rookie of the Year for the men's team. And on the women's side, we brought on one recruit who was a Gaelic footballer, but also a Irish step dancer. And she never played rugby, and now she's in line to be a scrum half for us down the road. So she was kind of a unique recruit that we had. We have a couple more who committed to the school, ended up not playing for us. So it's really me just exploring the high school recruitment sphere, getting a little bit more well known, and just making sure that my name's out there as a university for people that may want to attend. And on the D3 level, you're not offering scholarships, so I can't offer the same thing as a D1 school may be able to if they're varsity funded. But I can offer that. The location, one of the best locations in Rhode Island. We can offer great education and all of that. So it's really trying for me to hone in on, hey, yes, we have rugby. Yes, we have academics, but what can we offer you? And just making that pitch better overall.
I think that's on a lot of our minds, right? Yeah. How do we keep the interest in our sport and keep people coming into it and growing an appreciation for it? So
even at the university level, like now that we're going into the spring, we're going to have players who they're done with soccer, they're done with hockey, they're done with XYZ. Hey, here's another sport. Try this out. How do we bridge that gap for making you not just a one sport athlete? How do we make you a multi-sport athlete? Oh, you walked onto the basketball team. How about we try this sport out? So really just trying to bridge that gap university-wide and then also on the high school side.
Yeah. Well, when you figure that one out, let me know, mate, because I'm doing the same at Cal Maritime.
Certainly something.
Well, listen, very mindful of time. We've been on the phone for a while. Is there anything in closing you want to leave folks with or anything that we didn't catch up on that you think is important for people to know about you?
Yeah, just thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on this. Coaching is definitely one of my big passions. I love talking coaching, scheme, but also just the philosophy behind how we keep players involved and everything. I just think this is an awesome sport in general, not just rugby, but just everything that has to do with making sure that everyone is involved. So college sports in general is very impactful, rugby especially. So that's the big thing. If I can make an impact on one player's life, I've made a difference. But the hope is that all of my players, all 30 that I have, think back one day, hey, coach said this. Maybe I should take it to heart. Or, hey, coach, I have a problem here. Can you help me out? I'm always there for them, and that's the one thing that we have that's pretty cool. I've written so many recommendation letters and so many referrals for people to get jobs after college. We actually have 100% placement rate right now for all of my graduating seniors. So that's a really exciting thing that everyone has a job. They graduate, they're into the workforce.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, mate, thank you for taking the time to connect with me today, and it was awesome meeting your son earlier.
He'll be on the next episode.
Love it. Thanks for tuning into the show today. If you liked what you listened to, please leave us a 5-star review and hit the subscribe button.